I am Chris, and this is Ashley, and we are a marriage surviving sexual addiction and infidelity. And this is a video that, quite honestly, I've been dreading for a week. Ever since the comment was made, the question was asked in a comment of whether or not I've ever been physical or restrained Ashley. Um, I guess just kind of as a side effect of the addiction in trying to convince her that I was being truthful or of anything else. And um, I've I've dreaded it for a week because unfortunately a side effect of the addiction, which I'm sure is a side effect of any addiction, is when your coping mechanism is taken away. You I became very belligerent, very angry, very a very very short fuse, um, to where I was probably no fun at all to be around. Um, and I think, I think examples of either a drug addict or an alcoholic that has that fix taken away, has the alcohol taken away, becomes angry in a mad search, trying to find it, trying to cope. Um, you think like two dogs that feed from the same bowl, and one dog doesn't want to share, and as it gets angry to protect its food. Um, that was definitely a part of how I acted. Just a lot of anger, a lot of my emotions were all over the place. Um, be it anger, be it an extreme shame, self-loathing, uh, pitying myself, worthlessness, to back to anger, uh, and and that anger comes about in so many different ways. It comes in just a manifestation of just being on edge, um, because again,
Irritable.
yeah, irritable coping mechanism is gone. That it was a way for me to numb out and ignore reality, and so now that's gone, and so it's very irritable. But it's also having lied my entire life about this aspect of my life, and now suddenly trying to be truthful about these things, and to have someone doubt it or wonder what is truth. Then there's an irritability or an anger that comes from not being believed, or not just being trusted. And that took a lot of work in realizing that I can't trust myself, and so it makes no sense to expect others to trust me, whether it's counselors, whether it's Ashley, whether it's family, whatever it is. So the emotions definitely were all over the place. Now, it was obviously very, very bad, I'll say, in the early onset of it.
Mm.
I still feel a lot of that irritability now. Um, I certainly control it a whole lot better, but it also now serves as kind of a warning. Like if I find myself being very impatient with my children, um, it's kind of a warning to me of where am I at in recovery. Maybe I'm not acting out, but where am I um, in having healthy coping mechanisms? How am I handling stress? How am I handling um, fatigue, hunger? All these emotions that can lead to relapses. And so, now I see those as warning signs.
Yeah, and so do I. I mean, whenever that irritability comes through on him, and sometimes it's really hard for me. Um it's really hard of a spouse of a recovering addict because I get irritable all the time, you know? So what's to separate his irritability from mine, you know? And so sometimes when he gets irritable, like he said, he sees it as a sign of checking out where he's at in his recovery and what are his steps and everything like that. And I see it as a red flag, like, okay, so we need to communicate more. We need to tap into each other a little bit more, like what's going on if you're this irritable. But then sometimes I have to take a step back and be like, he's just having a bad day. Like I have bad days all the time. I'm irritable all the time. But it's really hard to decipher between the two. And that's one thing that Chris has been really good about, having patience with that. And one thing that I've had to really kind of try to decide between the two of, is this a red flag that he's acting out, or is this just he's irritable because we all get irritable, or is he irritable because there are some things that we maybe need to, you know, work on and check in on. There's like 3 steps there, I think,
Sure.
in the irritability.
Which again gets better over time, because in the
Mhm.
beginning, again, if I'm irritable because I'm having a bad day, and then it's Ashley wondering, why are you irritable?
Mhm.
Obviously, all of these things are very fresh. These intrusions into her life,
Yeah.
and so then I become even more irritable in the early stages, because it's, hey, I'm being truthful. I'm just having a rotten day.
Yeah.
So when she says that, you know, I'm patient, that's maybe now.
Yeah.
Not in the beginning, because the beginning was hard. I mean, and again, that's why I've dreaded this video for a week, to think back to how I was, and wonder. It's just another one of those things where you can sit there and wonder, how on earth would Ashley, knowing everything, knowing the lies, knowing the infidelity, knowing all of those things, and now dealing with this person that is angry, that is emotions all over the place, mean to her, rude. How on earth would she stay, and help me through this? And so having to think back on that's very hard. Thinking back on all these things, but it's been a learning thing to understand that there's parts of me, there's all kinds of parts to my life that I can't stand. That was a part of my life. And again, this is where Ashley helps me, is helping me realize, okay, that was you, but it doesn't have to be who you are now.
Yeah.
And it isn't.
And like, one thing he asks, how can I do that? How can I stay? How can our marriage have survived all this? Well, the biggest thing is along the way, I had to truly realize, and I think I've said this in videos before, but I've had to truly realize that there's two people inside my husband. There's the husband that I married, that I love, the man that is absolutely who I want to be with. And then there's the addict side of my husband. And the addict side is scary. He is scary. He is belligerent. He is angry. He can, you know,
He's a jerk.
he lies. There's all kinds of things
selfish
about the addict side that's inside my husband, but that's not really my husband. Those are just horrible choices that he has made in his life that have led him to do not great things, but that's not who defines my husband. The addict side is not truly my husband. It's just something that, if he feeds it, can become a bigger part of him. But if he doesn't feed it, it's very a minute thing at this point. It's very small. And those things from his addict like side of him pop up only every once in a while. Whereas if back, at the very beginning, like he said, it was a little harder because he was still feeding it a whole lot. And so that's the biggest thing I think we have to realize is, and sometimes it's hard because at the beginning I thought it was all a lie. I thought he was a lie. I thought everything that I loved about my husband was a lie, and it wasn't. All the things that I loved about my husband are still there. Everything about his personality is still there. It's just the addict side took over for a little bit. It took over a main part of him for a little bit, to be honest. Um, and once he broke free from that and put in the work for that, um, it went right back to the man that I fell in love with. And like he said, I have to remind him all the time, because it's hard not to go into a shameful place
Oh yeah.
when
It's
you have a ton of,
things to be
skeletons
ashamed of.
in your closet, when you have a ton of things that you've done in your past. It's really hard not to go into a shameful place. But my husband is a really good man, and it's very easy for me to say that because he is. And so I have to constantly remind him, listen, don't let this one thing that you did define who you are. Because I would say it was like a month and a half of when this commenter asked, like, has your husband ever restrained you? Has he ever, become belligerent with you? And it took, the second that I read the comment to my husband, it took both of us back to like, it's like a cringe moment. Like, oh, I remember that. And we sought out a ton of help to get through that part, because the kind of anger and the kind of things that can come through restraining and belligerent and anger and tempers, they are not fun to be around.
No.
And so I feel like it was only a month and a half. That's still kind of a long time. And it's not to say he doesn't get angry or irritable. Like he said, he does. So do I.
Yeah, I get really short.
But that month and a half was a really dark time. It's something that we both cringed at. But I have to remind him all the time, that's not what defines him. That's not who he is. And though I don't condone his actions at all, and they're not okay, I don't condone any spouse being belligerent or restraining or violence or anything. Not at all. That is something for each marriage to decide for themselves, and to seek out the kind of help that they need. And that's what we did. We got help from counseling. We put bottom lines and boundaries in places. And I guess the biggest thing that I could say that I saw as his spouse was he learned to keep his emotions in better control. He learned how to, we tell one of our children this all the time. You have to learn how to share your feelings. Don't react to your feelings. So we have to tell our child that all the time. And honestly, that's how we had to kind of talk to Chris. And when we took that addiction from him, basically because I discovered what he was doing. And once your spouse discovers it, because for the longest time I was in the dark.
Yeah.
And he had free range. And now he's under a spyglass. And it put him in a very irritable moment, because he got put under a spyglass of a spouse watching him and watching his steps and things that made him very angry and belligerent. Like he said, the dog ready to snap at the other dog who was coming to take away his food. But the help that we got put us in a much better place, and it doesn't define him. And he is past that point of being able to now share his feelings as opposed to react to them, is kind of what I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like a child learning. Yeah, and it takes time. It takes being patient with oneself. It took a lot of counseling. It took a lot of love, a lot of support. And I mean, I'm thankful to not be that.
Yeah.
To be able to look back and go, on all these aspects of my life, and be able to say, yeah, that was me, but that's not me now.
Yeah.
So
thank you. And we're very thankful for all the comments and the questions that have been coming in, because that is what helps us to know where to go with these YouTube videos. And one of the biggest things that I keep recognizing is how much people out there, they need to hear from the addict side. They need to hear the addict speak about their part. And I'm here and communicating my part, and I think that I'm here a a large part about on our videos is for validation aspects and things that I might be going through so people don't feel alone. But my hope is that Chris is answering some questions out there that maybe, I don't know, maybe some spouses aren't quite ready to communicate their feelings. Maybe they're not quite there. Maybe they just don't know how, or the tools aren't in place. So I'm hoping that, more questions come in. Chris was saying, like, no questions are off limits. I hope they do keep asking questions. This happens to be a hard question for him, but no questions are off limits, because if we can help, especially with the addict side of it, I think it can be really helpful if that communication isn't quite there in the marriage. And that's unfortunately what I see a lot of, is that the communication is really, really hard. Every time I talk to a spouse that's going through this and struggling, it's just, my spouse won't communicate. They won't tell me how to help or what to do or how we can get through this. And so hopefully by some of these questions, and again, every situation is different, but hopefully we're helping clear up some of the confusion, or just again offering a shoulder to cry on, and offering support that you're not alone. So thank you.
Thank you.